How many times would you fail before you quit? 1 time? 5 times? Maybe 10? What about 100? I was standing in a small, silent room, staring at a screen that showed the same result I had seen so many times before. Another rejection, another failure, another attempt that led nowhere. That was failure number 100. I did not shout. I did not break anything. I just stood there, completely still, feeling empty, because this time felt different. Hello and welcome to English with Ryan. Chapter 1. The 100th Failure. The first few failures had been easy to ignore. I told myself I was learning. I told myself success takes time, and I believed it. After 10 failures, I felt frustrated, but I kept going. After 20, I started to doubt myself. After 50, people around me began to ask questions. Why don't you try something else? Maybe this is not for you. Be realistic. Their words stayed in my head longer than I wanted to admit. But I continued, not because I was confident, but because I did not want to give up on something I had already invested so much into. Then came failure number 90. By that point, I was tired. Not just physically, but mentally. Every new attempt felt heavier than the last. Every mistake felt like proof that I was not good enough. Still, I pushed forward until I reached 100, and suddenly, everything became quiet. No motivation, no excitement, just one simple thought. Maybe they were right. Maybe I should stop. I looked at the screen again, reading the rejection message one more time. The words were polite, but the meaning was clear. You are not what we are looking for. For a moment, I almost accepted it. I almost decided that this was the end of the story. But then something unexpected happened. A question appeared in my mind, clear and sharp. What if failure number 100 is not the end? What if it is the moment right before everything changes? I did not have proof. I did not have confidence. I only had one thing left. A choice. Quit now. And all 100 failures would mean nothing. Or try one more time and risk failing again. I took a deep breath. My hands were not steady. My mind was not clear. But I made a decision. One more try. Just one more. Because if I had already failed 100 times, then one more failure would not destroy me. But one more attempt might change everything. And that was enough to keep going. Chapter 2. The First Dream. Long before the failures began, there was only a simple dream. It did not start with a perfect plan or a clear path. It started with a feeling, a quiet desire to change something, to become more than what life had offered so far. I remember the moment clearly. I was watching someone talk about success, not in a loud or dramatic way, but calmly, as if it was something normal. They spoke about building something from nothing, about learning, about creating opportunities instead of waiting for them. It felt distant, almost unreal, but something about it stayed with me. For the first time, I asked myself a different question. What if I could do that too? At the beginning, everything felt possible. I imagined a better life, more freedom, more control over my future. I imagined helping my family, proving to myself that I was capable of more. The dream was simple, but powerful. So I started. I did not have experience. I did not have special skills, but I had energy, curiosity, and belief. And at that stage, belief was enough to begin. I tried different ideas. I explored opportunities that I barely understood. I made decisions quickly, sometimes without thinking too much. Every small action felt exciting. Even the smallest progress felt like a sign that I was moving in the right direction. I stayed up late, searching for information, learning basic concepts, trying to connect the pieces together. I believed that if I worked hard enough, success would come. It seemed logical. Work hard, get results. Simple, but reality was different. The first mistakes appeared quietly. Small problems that I did not pay much attention to. I ignored them because I was focused on moving forward. I thought speed was important. I thought effort alone would solve everything. I did not realize that I was missing something important. Understanding. I was doing many things, but I did not truly know what I was doing. Still, I continued, because at that stage, failure had not yet shown its full weight. It was still light, still easy to carry, and belief was still stronger than doubt. Looking back, I understand something now. That early stage was necessary, not because it was correct, but because it gave me the courage to begin. Without that dream, without that belief, I would have never taken the first step. And without the first step, the rest of the journey would have never existed. Everything started there, with a simple idea and the decision to try. Chapter 3. The First Failures. The first failure did not feel like a failure. It felt like a small mistake, something easy to fix. I remember thinking, I just need to try again. So I did. The second attempt was not much different. I made adjustments, changed a few things, and expected a better result. But it failed again. Still, I was not worried. At that point, failure felt temporary. I believed success was just one step away, just one correction, one better decision. So I kept going. The third, fourth, and fifth attempts followed the same pattern. Try, adjust, try again. Each time, I expected things to work. Each time, they didn't. Slowly, the feeling began to change. What once felt like small mistakes started to feel heavier. The excitement I had in the beginning became less intense, but I refused to stop. I told myself that persistence was the key. So I pushed forward without truly changing my approach. That was the problem. I was repeating the same actions, expecting different results. By the 10th failure, frustration started to grow. I spent more time thinking about what went wrong, but I still did not fully understand the deeper issues. I focused on surface-level changes, not the root of the problem. And so, the failures continued. Each one looked slightly different, but they all led to the same outcome: no progress. Around this time, doubt quietly entered my mind. Not loud, not overwhelming, but present. Maybe I am not doing this right. Maybe I am missing something important. But I did not stop. Because even though doubt was growing, hope was still there. I believed that effort had to lead somewhere. I believed that if I kept trying, something would eventually work. But I was learning a difficult lesson. Effort without understanding leads to repetition, and repetition without improvement leads to frustration. Still, I continued, because I did not know what else to do, and because a part of me still believed that success was close, closer than it actually was. The early failures were not the hardest. They were the most dangerous, because they gave me the illusion that I was improving, when in reality, I was standing still. And I would not fully understand that until much later. For now, I kept moving, forward, but without direction, learning, but without clarity, trying, but without real progress. And the failures were just beginning. Chapter 4. The failures did not stop. They multiplied. What started as small mistakes became a long series of repeated disappointments. 10 failures turned into 20. 20 became 50. And somewhere along the way, I stopped counting with confidence and started counting with fear. Each new attempt carried more pressure than the last. It was no longer just about trying. It was about proving that all the previous failures meant something, that they were not wasted time. But the results stayed the same. Nothing worked. I lost more than just time. I lost energy, focus, and belief. Every failed attempt felt heavier, as if it was adding weight that I had to carry forward. People around me noticed. Some tried to help, but their advice often felt like doubt. You've tried enough. Maybe this path is not for you. You're wasting your time. Others were more direct. They laughed. Not loudly, not cruelly, but enough for me to feel it. That was harder than failure itself, because failure is private, but judgment is public. I started to question everything, not just my methods. Maybe I was not meant to succeed. Maybe I misunderstood what success required. Maybe I had already reached my limit. By the time I reached 90 failures, I was exhausted. Not just physically, but mentally. Each new attempt felt like a risk with no reward. I no longer felt excitement. I no longer felt curiosity. I only felt pressure. And slowly, something dangerous happened. I stopped believing in the process. Before, I trusted that effort would lead somewhere. Now, I was no longer sure. I still tried, but without conviction. I still moved forward, but without direction. It felt like walking in circles, hoping that somehow the outcome would change. Inside, I was already close to giving up. Not because I wanted to quit, but because I no longer saw a reason to continue. The dream that once gave me energy now felt distant, unreal, almost impossible. I reached a point where stopping felt easier than continuing. A point where failure no longer hurt, because I had become used to it. And that was the lowest moment. Not the failure itself, but the loss of belief. Because when belief disappears, effort begins to fade. And without effort, nothing moves. I stood there, surrounded by everything I had tried, everything I had failed at, and everything I no longer understood. And for the first time, I truly felt it. I had reached the bottom. Chapter 5. Learning from Failure. Something changed. Not outside, but inside the way I looked at failure. I stopped asking, "Why is this happening to me?" And I started asking, "What is this trying to teach me?" At first, the question felt strange. For so long, failure had only meant one thing. I was not good enough. I went back to my previous attempts, one by one, not to feel regret, but to understand. I reviewed my decisions. I examined my actions. I looked at the patterns I had ignored before, and slowly, I began to see the truth. Most of my failures were not random. They were predictable. I had rushed when I needed patience. I had guessed when I needed knowledge. I had repeated actions without improving them. It was not effort that I lacked. It was awareness. That realization was uncomfortable, but it was also powerful, because if failure had a pattern, then it could be changed. So I adjusted my approach. Instead of trying again immediately, I paused. I studied more carefully. I focused on understanding the basics, not just moving forward. I asked better questions. Why does this work? Why did this fail? What is different this time? I also accepted something difficult. Progress would be slower, much slower than before, but it would be real. I stopped chasing quick results and started building real skills. I practiced with intention, not just repetition. I focused on clarity instead of speed. Mistakes still happened. In fact, I still failed many times, but the feeling was different. Each failure now gave me information. Each mistake showed me something I did not see before. Instead of feeling like I was going backward, I began to feel like I was moving forward, even when the result was not success. That shift changed everything. I became more patient, more focused, more aware. I no longer feared failure in the same way, because I understood it. Failure was no longer an enemy. It became a guide, a teacher that was strict, sometimes frustrating, but always honest. And for the first time, I felt something I had not felt in a long time. Control, not over the outcome, but over the process. I could not guarantee success, but I could guarantee improvement, and that was enough. Because improvement, repeated over time, leads somewhere, even if you cannot see it yet. Chapter 6. The Breakthrough. The next attempt did not feel special. It felt like all the others. There was no excitement, no strong belief that this time would be different. I simply followed the process I had built, step by step, without rushing. I prepared more carefully than before. I reviewed what I had learned. I focused on clarity. I avoided the mistakes that had repeated so many times in the past. Everything I did was slower, more intentional. Then I tried again. At first, nothing seemed unusual. The same waiting, the same uncertainty, the same quiet tension as I looked at the result. But when the response finally came, something was different. It was not a rejection. I read the message once, then again, and again. It was real. For the first time after so many failures, the answer was yes. I did not react immediately. There was no sudden celebration, no loud emotion, just silence. Because it took a moment to understand what had just happened. After 100 failures, something had finally worked. The result itself was not perfect. It was not a huge success. It was a small opportunity, a small win, but it meant everything. Because it proved something important. All the previous failures were not wasted. They had been building toward this moment. Every mistake I had analyzed, every adjustment I had made, every time I chose to continue instead of quitting, it all led here. I completed the task carefully. This time, I paid attention to every detail. I communicated clearly. I stayed focused. I did not allow fear to take control, and the outcome was positive. That one success led to another chance. Then, another. Opportunities did not suddenly become easy, but they became possible. I was no longer guessing. I was applying what I had learned, and it worked. Slowly, the results improved. Not dramatically, but consistently. That consistency was something I had never experienced before. It gave me confidence, not from hope, but from evidence. I could see the progress. I could feel the difference. The breakthrough was not just the result. It was the realization. Success was not something random. It was built, step by step, failure by failure, lesson by lesson. And when everything finally came together, it did not feel like luck. It felt earned, quietly, steadily, and completely. And in that moment, I understood something clearly. The journey had not been about avoiding failure. It had been about becoming the person who could succeed. Chapter 7. The Real Lesson. Success did not erase the past. It made it clearer. When things finally started to work, I did not forget the failures. I could still remember each moment, each rejection, each time I felt like stopping. Those memories stayed with me, not as pain, but as lessons. I began to see failure differently. It was never there to stop me. It was there to shape me. Each failure had removed something unnecessary. Each mistake had corrected something I could not see before. Slowly, without realizing it, those failures had built the foundation for everything that followed. And yet, I noticed something important. Most people never reach that point. Not because they are not capable, but because they stop too early. I had almost done the same. At 10 failures, it is easy to quit. At 20, it feels reasonable. At 50, it feels logical. At 90, it feels necessary. But the truth is simple. The number is not what matters. What matters is whether you are still learning. If you fail and learn, you are moving forward. If you fail and repeat the same mistake, you are standing still. That difference changes everything. Looking back, I understand that success was never about reaching 100 attempts. It was about what I became during those attempts. More patient, more aware, more disciplined, more honest with myself. Those qualities did not appear overnight. They were built through repetition, through discomfort, through moments when quitting felt easier than continuing. And that is why success, when it finally came, did not feel like the end. It felt like a beginning, because now I had something more valuable than results. I had a process, a way to approach challenges, a way to handle failure, a way to continue moving forward, even when things were uncertain. That process could be used again, and again, and again. The story was never about failing 100 times. It was about refusing to let those failures define the outcome. Anyone can fail. Everyone does. But not everyone continues. If there is one thing that matters, it is this. Do not measure your progress by how many times you fail. Measure it by how much you learn each time. Because failure is not the opposite of success. It is part of it. And sometimes, the only difference between those who succeed and those who do not is one more attempt, one more step, one more decision to continue.